Hi everyone. Today I want to talk to you about why I believe that nosodes are very useful and sometimes necessary in infection-based cases, meaning things such as pandas PANS, Lyme disease, things like that, where the dysfunction in the case stemmed basically from an infection, whether that is documented or suspected. So first, what are homeopathic nosodes? These are remedies which are created to target specific pathogens. I'm actually taking one myself right now for Epstein-Barr virus. Ever since I had COVID back in January of this year, 2022, I ended up with long COVID. And after 6 weeks of trying everything, I finally realized I had all the symptoms of EBV. I did not go out and get tested. I already knew that most people do test positive for it, and whether or not it's actually active is up to the interpretation of the doctor. And so I figured I'm probably going to test positive for it anyway. And even if I don't, I know that I have all of the symptoms, and therefore the nosode will probably cover all of the symptoms. I started taking the nosode and felt better within 24 hours. Now, fast forward, this is September of 2022, and I still need to take the nosode about once a month, especially if I do something that's sort of strenuous on my body, like go hard in the gym. I noticed within a couple of days, I might start feeling the muscle weakness and stuff that I had after COVID. And the nosode pulls me right out every single time, thank God, because there are times that I'm like, what if it doesn't work this time? And it does. So anyway, that's just a little side note that I do this for myself, and it hasn't been suppressive. There is a little bit of a fear among some homeopaths that nosodes suppress symptoms, but I'm going to explain to you why I think that they're necessary and why I don't believe that they suppress symptoms. In my experience, my vast experience using nosodes with myself and my clients, I haven't seen that. So first I want to talk about the concept of never been well since. This is something that we're taught in homeopathy school to look for in cases. So if a client comes to us and says, I haven't felt well, or I've had all these symptoms since this happened. Now this could be a trauma, this could be an infection, and we're taught to view the case as, okay, something went wrong in that moment in time, and we need to find a remedy, or we may need to find a remedy that targets that situation. Maybe we need to find a constitutional remedy that targets a trauma. In many cases that are infection-based, we can get the case moving along with a constitutional remedy, but it really may never start moving along until a nosode is used, because it's a never been well since an infection case usually. Again, that is whether it is suspected or documented. Sometimes it is very hard, an infection, to show up on labs. I think, I'm not going to go into detail, but I think we all understand the lab situation with Lyme disease. So that's one example. Borrelia, it may or may not show positive. And so sometimes a clinical diagnosis has to be made. And oftentimes people have already been diagnosed, whether or not they have the lab work to back it up. They've already been diagnosed by a doctor and they come to me. I like to use constitutional remedies initially whenever I can, but if we find that the case plateaus or it's just not really moving along the way we think it should be, then we will bring in a nosode to help with that situation. So there's the never been well since situation that really justifies the need for a nosode sometimes. I want to talk now about using a constitutional and then possibly clearing the case. So I've already touched on that, but in classical homeopathy, we're taught to use one remedy at a time, use a constitutional, and then if several well-chosen constitutional remedies are making no dents in the case, then you need to look at possibly clearing something. We call that either a clear or an intercurrent. It's a remedy used to specifically target something in the case that has caused damage. This could be the birth control pill. This could be any other type of medical intervention. This could be an infection. So, today I'm sort of touching on nosodes, infections. So in this case, a nosode is being used as an intercurrent to clear the damage done by that infection, and then we can go back to constitutional remedies. Yes, there are times where I will have someone do both or alternate them. I don't often have people take them on the same day. So sometimes I'll have them alternate a well-chosen constitutional remedy with a nosode. And there are actually a lot of practitioners within the Lyme and PANS community who do that. I would say most practitioners within these communities do that. All right, next I want to talk about why I believe it's not suppressive. It just goes back to the never been well since scenario of, this caused this problem. And so it only makes sense to use a well-chosen nosode to clear the problem. Now, in what situation might it be suppressive? Let's say you get diagnosed with strep throat and you just have typical strep symptoms and you're using a strep nosode. Well, you probably don't need the strep nosode. Your body is having a typical response to that pathogen and probably just need some acute remedies. Now, when would a strep nosode be brought in that situation? It probably wouldn't be unless we notice that the infection is causing some sort of a mental and emotional symptom that goes along with that strep nosode, and we know that that nosode will help clear it, all right? So if used the correct way, they're not suppressive. Now, how do I know that? That goes into my fourth point, my experience. I have so much experience, and let me tell you, if any people on this planet were going to be suppressed by nosodes, it would be my kids and the kids of the people, the other admin in this group. All of our children had pandas, or we've all at least had one child with pandas. I had 2 children with pandas. And we were treating our own kids long before there were homeopaths who really understood this condition and really understood how aggressive some of these cases we need to be with the nosodes and with remedies in general. We didn't understand quite how high in potency we needed to go in some of the remedies, or how long maybe some of the kids needed to be taking a nosode. I mean, look at me, I'm 8 months into using the Epstein-Barr nosode. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take, but apparently this is a deep problem I've probably had for a long time. Now, it has gotten fewer and further between. At first, I had to take it like twice a week, and then it went to like once a week, once every 2 weeks. I'm at like once a month now, maybe even once every 6 weeks. So this is the same thing with, let's say, a Lyme or a PANS situation. A lot of times we need to start off a little bit more aggressive with the nosodes, and then we can slowly taper off. This was definitely my situation with my kids, and it was working. We don't feel that it suppressed in any way. Like, I mean, I'm not going to brag here. I'm not bragging, but I'm telling you where my kids are now. This was back when they were 3 and 6 when I started the remedies and nosodes and, using homeopathy and stuff. They are now 14, and my oldest is turning 18 next month. My oldest is an entrepreneur, homeschool entrepreneur, making more money than I am now, like super successful, super focused on what he's doing. And he had a lot of problems back then. My other son is in 8th grade. He's in all advanced classes, started out with a 93 IQ, guys, okay? He was way behind in reading, way behind in math. The future was not looking good for him. He had a significant, he was basically nonverbal by the age of 3. So he has slowly gained his speech over the years. He's in all advanced classes. He's super proud of himself. And this has slowly evolved over the years. There's no suppression happening in my house. I have used a ton of nosodes for myself. When I started using homeopathy for my kids, I had a chronic sore throat. It wasn't coming up as a positive strep test on any of the labs, even though my kids were getting positive strep tests, not even in my blood work. And I had a chronic sore throat for 6 months when I started homeopathy. I would take an antibiotic, it would come back. I would use herbs, then it would come back. Like nothing would fully clear it until I used the strep nosode. Now, this is a situation where, I said earlier, you may not want to use a strep nosode for like a sore throat, but this was a chronic problem and none of the constitutionals were working. I was working with a homeopath as well, and nothing was working. And so strep nosode, symptoms gone, and no suppression there either. Now, since then, I've gone to homeopathy school. I have worked with tons of clients with these conditions, Lyme, etc. And I haven't seen signs of suppression. I mean, worst case scenario, the nosode doesn't work. We move on to something else. Sometimes there are many infections in the case. And so we have to sort of go digging into the case history to figure out, well, where do we start? We might have to clear many things. I also still use herbs, okay? And I know a lot of homeopaths, especially in homeopathy school, were taught don't use any of that stuff. It's suppressive. Again, I haven't found that to be the case. That has been my experience. Let me know if you have any questions about that. If you have any hesitations, what are your concerns? What have you heard about using nosodes in homeopathy? Because I know that there are certain practitioners who poo-poo that, and they say that those of us who are using them are suppressing symptoms. Again, I just haven't seen that. There are so many practitioners who know and understand pandas and are able to quickly move through symptoms and help resolve it much more quickly than we could back then. Back then, many of us were going super rogue because we were in crisis and nobody really fully understood how to help us. And so that's why we did it. And so we, maybe there was a reason for that. We learned in the trenches what works, what doesn't, what's not good to do. We understood aggravations. Okay, so that's it for now. I will include a link to the related blog post on my website if you want to go look at that, but I've basically covered everything in this video. Have a great day.